Policy and Politics with me, Tarun Nangia. The Delhi High Court yesterday has as good as a message from the angels. These angels were Justice Vipin Sanghi and Justice Rekha Palli. Hundreds of relatives of over 300 people who were admitted due to corona in Max Hospital were waiting with bated breath as the hospital have moved the Delhi High Court requesting that they needed oxygen, and oxygen barely for a few hours was available at disposal with the hospital. The Delhi High Court bench chaired by Justice Vipin Sanghi and Justice Rekha Palli moved into action and ensured that oxygen indeed reached the hospital. And we can say that hundreds of lives in a way were saved because of this. It could have been a catastrophe. The Delhi High Court showed sensitiveness. Also, they nudged the executive into action at this very point and ensured that these people were helped. We all know these are tough times, but the stellar role that the courts of our country are playing needs to be lauded, and that is why this episode today. And I have a stellar panel with me today for this. I have with me Senior Advocate Pinky Anand, who has served as the Additional Solicitor General of India. I have with me Senior Advocate Geeta Luthra. I've got with me Senior Advocate Gopal Jain. I have with me Meghna Mishra. She's partner with Karanjawala and Company. I have with me Gagan Kumar of Krishnomics Legal. I have with me Sameer Jain. I also have with me Amir Singh Pasreech. I welcome all of you for today's show. First come first, I'll request Ma'am Pinky Anand to open the discussion about what she felt about yesterday's order and contribution of the courts to this whole issue.
I'll tell you honestly, Tarun, this began not yesterday, but basically day before. From day before evening, in fact, the discussion through various channels and with various hospitals and doctors had led one to understand that the oxygen supply had become a critical issue as far as healthcare is concerned, and was something which is a dire need. So the question of actually moving the court came to one's mind in any case. The Delhi High Court took cognizance of this issue, and actually it is a commendable thing, because today the emergency situation required an emergency response. Imagine the High Court sitting as a division bench, taking cognizance of the issue at hand, and then sitting again and reassembling at 9:20 p.m. Of course, these are unprecedented issues. In some sense, of course, there's some precedence, but only in critical emergent issues that the courts sit in this fashion to take up matters. One may say, somebody may have said that this is not an issue where maybe it's a policy matter and something which may not be intervened with. But at the same time, that the emergency requirements are such that there was no other manner in which it was possible. Yes, policy decisions had been taken to actually enhance the supply to Delhi to bring it to 480 metric tons. But the point was the supply at the time required for the patients who would have died but for the intervention of the courts at the appropriate time and in the manner that they did. So I think this is something that we really need to look forward to, the fact that we can have courts intervene in human issues, human interest issues, in healthcare issues where required. This is served to be a great action on the part of the Delhi High Court. And I think it is something that we need to be cognizant of, commend, applaud, and look forward to.
Okay. These comments, indeed, we also feel that yesterday's order was nothing less than that words from angels which have been sounded to the relatives of all those admitted and even those who were admitted. Let Mr. Gopal Jain, your opening comment, please.
Well, I think the order of the Delhi High Court was the real oxygen. The order, in fact, has given life, as you said, to a number of patients who were at a critical stage. So no better way of typifying it than bringing life, and I call it an order, oxygenated order, which sprung the wheels of justice into motion. Second, the Constitution talks of Article 226 and gives the court extraordinary powers to do justice. This is truly a great example of exercise of that power in line with the constitutional scheme: extraordinary situation, justice-oriented approach, human-oriented approach. And three, and most importantly, it shows when the court acts in a swift and decisive manner and sends out a strong signal, something which the motions of the executive had not enabled for such a long period of time, quickly got into motion. So justice eventually is critical to timing, and the timing was appropriate. The order and the sentiment worked itself out, and real relief was given. In many cases, we will never see real relief going in the nick So in every sense, this is to be highly commended. And I think it's a gigantic step forward. And I think today the Supreme Court, or yesterday the Supreme Court also indicated they'll now take it on. So Delhi High Court, as always, has always been in the lead position on many matters. And this is one such great example that they've shown.
Okay. I'll go across to Geeta Luthra. Ma'am, what are your observations on what happened?
So, of course, it's excellent. And we were really waiting. I mean, everybody with bated breath. It's a time bomb waiting to explode. And fortunately, it seems to have been diverted at this point. Now, the question is, how do we go forward? I feel that yesterday's hearing, today's hearing in the Saroj Hospital, that Rohini Hospital matter, again, same request has been made to the High Court. 6 High Courts are dealing with this. So we have to laud each one of these judges in all those courts, whether it is the Nagpur bench, any other courts. Ultimately, the courts are coming to the rescue. Now, Supreme Court's, I think, intervention is taking all the 4 points on supply of oxygen, essential drugs, vaccination, lockdown, all of them. And I feel Supreme Court's really taking the matter head on, and it's going to come up tomorrow. But as Justice Bhatt said, what the High Courts are doing, please do not stop. Go on with what the High Courts are doing. And that's what I also, when we say this, even at the time of the lockdown and the courts going online, I can say that Chief Justice Bobde's bench had given the directions. And thereafter, when once again there was a pressure by members of the bar for their own reasons, they have their own reasons to open up the courts, again, Justice Kaul stepped in very adroitly and very tactfully, dealt with the matter. And, that's how I think some lives have been saved. Now with this, as Gopal said, this order is supplying oxygen, and therefore we can just laud the orders, the yesterday's order and today's order of Justice Sanghi and Justice Pali.
Okay.
Let's not forget what the Supreme Court is also doing in the matter. I think let's see the way forward. Ultimately, what the courts are saying, let's see, we can't have only 6 High Courts dealing with it when there are issues all over the country. So we do need the Supreme Court to give some direction also.
Okay, point taken. I'm going across to Amir Singh Pasrich. Mr. Pasrich, your observations on the Delhi High Court order by Justice Sanghi and Justice Rekha Palli.
Of course, we have to laud them and thank them for having brought out this order. As he said, it's oxygen. The time bomb was there. I'm a little more pessimistic because in the last 2 days, I was shocked and surprised at the number of calls that were coming to me for help to get hospital beds, ICU beds, and anyone who I knew who could help people. So I unfortunately feel that the courts had to step in, and they did a great job doing that, for which we have to thank them. Now, if you look at the Supreme Court's role, for me, that seems to be something that is more of an aggregator of putting all the justice issues together and policy together, where state and central governments are not able to coordinate properly. You have to have a Supreme Court that will bring it all together. And that's what we're expecting in the next maybe day or two, because there'll be directions from the Supreme Court, which will also perhaps create policy decisions. It was quite surprising that, industry would take 72 hours to react, and then the High Court has to say in its directions to the state that, look, you better do it immediately because lives are being lost. We need this kind of intervention. We have to thank the courts for having the powers. I think this is a very rare country where the courts step in for this kind of thing, and the Supreme Court will do that tomorrow. Thank you to the Delhi High Court. Of course, nothing but thank yous. But I have to say, from what I've seen, what I've heard from every family that I've spoken to has been touched by this awful disease. In the last 4 or 5 days, I am so shocked at the lack of oxygen, the lack of beds, and the lack of ICUs that we have to have our courts step up. And I'm sorry to say it again and again, but the message of masking and safety, it cannot be left unsaid again and again. For those people who think they can step out, meet people, or do anything, right now the answer, and I have worked from 6th April 2020 to 19th April 2021 without a day off, even going to the office. But I think now one has to go into your home and lock down.
Point taken. And indeed, as many as 6 high courts have, in a sense, come out and issued orders which have helped people. We'll go across to Meghna Mishra, ma'am. Your comment on the order by the Delhi High Court.
I think time and again, it's the courts that have shown that they are the ones who come to the immediate aid. And this was a big relief and something that has sent a very positive message at a time when everybody was feeling very pulled down. So the High Court's order came in a swift way. It has pushed the machinery to act. I'm sure they were trying to. The numbers are absolutely astronomical. So, if you create 3,000 beds, you can't keep, even every day, the numbers are so high that it can't be, you can't keep up. So the fact that the High Court steps in, a positive order comes, it sends some sort of hope to people. One has heard of people who have passed, unfortunately, of deaths because of lack of oxygen. And, the High Court noted that and said that even one death would be too much. And it's unfortunate that the country is in this situation, but one hopes, and now with the push that has come and the Supreme Court stepping in, let's hope that this is resolved very quickly, because even one death is too many, So
Okay.
we are very grateful to the High Court for having stepped in, and to the Supreme Court. And it's always been the courts. So I feel proud to be a lawyer practicing in this court, because time and again, it just keeps repeating, whether it's water, it's pollution, it was the CNG buses, it's always been the courts that have come to the rescue.
Indeed. I remember an episode I did with you on Justice Arun Mishra on Delhi's water pollution, and what a good order it was with Justice Sikri.
Absolutely.
That was some time back. I'm going across to Gagan Kumar at this point from Krishnomics Legal. Your observations on the order.
Thanks, Tarun. Undoubtedly, the role of High Court need to be exalted. And as Meghna also mentioned, lawyers are considered to be supermen without cape. And the cape in this case are the judges of the court who actually give us the power to deliver or help obtain justices for the people who actually need it. Having said that, for a moment, let us reflect on why this situation arose in the first place. And here we would have to consider that different political parties having different governments in states and center led to unwarranted political bickering. That to certain extent resulted in aberration in distribution system, which caused this entire chaos. Now we are going through a crisis where we don't need a Pakistan or a Sachin Tendulkar to unite the country. We need all hands on board. And the need of the hour is the unity, resolve, and resilience, which thankfully to the powers of the High Court, all the government bodies have come on board, and the government bodies have started acting in a coherent manner. After the nudging of the High Courts and the Supreme Court, now the government has also passed an order under the Disaster Management Act. So the directions of the Delhi High Court has been given effective with immediate effect, that there would not be any hindrance or any stoppage to the oxygen across the states, traveling across the state. So I think that's a very welcome decision, and it should have come without the nudging of the High Court.
That's the point. It should have come without the nudging of the High Court. I'll go across to Sameer Jain. He's founder of PSL Advocates and Solicitors. Sameer, your comments on the order by Justice Sanghi and Justice Rekha Palli.
Well, Tarun, as far as the order is concerned, I don't have anything extra to say. Everyone has said the courts ought to be lauded, and yes, they ought to be. In fact, the follow-up of yesterday's order was another petition filed by another hospital, which I was just following. The hearing is currently going on, and the same bench is reeling with the the problem of enforcing the allocation order. That's another issue which was being put forth before the court, and as far as I understand, specific instructions have been given that the allocation or the reallocation order, where the oxygen allocation for different states have been increased, needs to be implemented, because the suppliers are very different, are in different states, and there is an order of the center, while there's state government protecting the interest of their own people, not letting the oxygen go out. So all of these concerns are being considered. The COVID bed situation is being considered. It's really interesting and heartening to see judges of a court to sit and go deep into the issue of what is hindering the whole process of giving healthcare. And again, it's certainly a great order and good to be part of the whole system.
Good to be part of the whole system, and especially all the lawyers who practice in Delhi High Court. Such orders give us hope that when everything is not lost. The courts are always there to intervene. I remember in the middle of when all this was happening, the central government said that okay, tomorrow we can then take it up. The court said no, in half an hour we're going to assemble again and discuss. With that urgency, the court took it up. Advocate Sudhanshu Pandey joins us. Mr. Pandey, your opinion on this order and what were your observations?
See, Tarun, my observation, in fact, everybody has spoken and there is no point of repeating that. There is no doubt the desperate situation which we were facing last 6-7 days. And as you say, desperate situation needs desperate measures. The constitutional right and what the High Court was actually doing, High Court was, in fact, preserving the most basic right to live. That is the right which the High Court was concerned with, to protect the rights of those who could not protect this. The problem was that there is so many takers of oxygen. In fact, this is not the Delhi problem, because we are here in the seat of Delhi. And it is not that the executive could not have sorted it out. As I observed, there was an element of politics which was going on in this matter. And there was a passing of the buck. That was also started, as it always happens in the bureaucratic setup which we have, that people start doing that I am doing what I am supposed to do. He is not doing his bit. And what High Court has actually done, High Court has called everybody on one table and has not let this happen. And this is, I think, the single most achievement of this order is that the authorities have been told to do brainstorming together and to come to a conclusion which is to a solution which is viable and which actually has an immediate effect. In fact, taking the matter by Supreme Court in this case, I think would be the most appropriate thing, because it is not a question of Delhi. I know we are facing this desperate situation. In fact, we are not able to know that there are many people who do not have the access of the hospital. Oxygen is something much more than that. And in fact, when Supreme Court will take, and Supreme Court has said that not only the oxygen, Supreme Court will go into the all issues, pan India. And in this situation, I think there will be a possibility where we will have a better coordination. Maybe the same thing which the High Court has, the flame which the High Court has actually drawn in this matter, will be taken to its logical conclusion by Supreme Court. And we are very hopeful that Supreme Court will find some lasting solution of these desperate problems.
Okay, Supreme Court. I'll go across to Gopal Jain quickly now. Mr. Jain, you are somebody who understands the policy side of the problem as well as the court side of the issue. Today also hospitals have approached the Delhi High Court. How do you see the role of courts in nudging the executive into action? Because India is a country of shortages and these problems will not stop easily.
Yes, I think the courts have in the past and continue to play a proactive role. And we've seen that in the whole constitutional scheme, the last word, as I call it, always remains with the court, because they have the power of mandamus. You can give a direction, a command for the executive to do it. So when you have a Disaster Management Act and you have various arms of the government, the health ministry, which are otherwise vigilant, it is something which should have happened in due course, because the court can't plan in advance, whereas the executive can plan in advance. And when there's that gap between a problem and a solution, that's where I think courts have flexibility in their writ jurisdiction and the extraordinary power to do it. But I think the message is, if you don't do it, that is, the executive fails or the authorities under the Disaster Management Act don't do it, the courts, whether it means working 24/7 overtime will make sure they'll step in to ensure that the job gets done. So I think it's a very strong message that if you don't do your job, brackets open, your slack, or you abdicate, or you let things go out of control and human lives are involved, the court will not stop short. And this midnight justice, as I call it, we've now seen for the last few years, they've truly made the doors of the court open 24/7. So a bit like the news channels, they're also 24/7, all the time available to deal with the situation, given its criticality. So it's great commendations to the court. But like you said, the message to the policymakers is you should have put this in place before this. It was something we saw happening from January. The fact that the situation got to, like they would say in a T20 match, the last overs or the slog overs was something they should have avoided. But fortunately, in the constitutional scheme, vast powers are given to the court to make the machinery of the executive move, which they've done in this case and in other cases.
Okay, point taken. I'll go across to Pinky Anand at this point. Ma'am, you've seen both sides of the picture. You've seen, as the Additional Solicitor General of India, the government side, also as a senior advocate, what happens in the courts. How do you look at this issue as a classic example of the judiciary, in a sense, nudging the executive into action? And how does it work? Your comment on this whole procedure?
Tarun, there is a slight complication in this. When we talk about the judgment which has come and the way which it has helped, there's no issue on that score. It did help, and it came in a timely time with the oxygenated order as it came, supplying what was needed. At the same time, to say that ultimately there is always a need for courts to step in. Yes, the courts are there as guardians, and yes, we have extraordinary jurisdiction. But at the same time, policy matters are normally best left to the policy makers. There is a reason for it also. I mean, for example, for the time being, when we are talking about even the Supreme Court over the 4 issues, there will be problems on this because ultimately the considerations that have been taken by the government, whether it is the politicians who are heading the country, having been selected by the people, or the bureaucrats who are taking it administratively, there are issues. And you cannot have simultaneous exercise. That's why I reserve my comments on that. I do think it was a time when the executive was pulling into operation, but I must add in a caveat. A statement was made that the policy makers should have had in place. Of course, ideally, it should have had in place as to any kind of episode that will happen, but this is an unprecedented situation. By March, the expectation was that the COVID attack would go down. So the entire targeting of the supplies and possibly the entire working was on 2 fronts. One on the health front, and the second, obviously, is also on the economic front. I am not saying at this point of time we have to look at the economic interest by any means. Health is the only concern because that's an emergency and that's a calamity, so therefore you have to step into place. But you do have these two interests of people and the public, which has to be taken into account of when taking any decision. It is not an easy decision. So the intervention of the court during the emergency is one thing, but the intervention of a court on a larger basis is something that we must consider very, very cautiously and tread in. It's like treading in every situation would not be possible on a policy matter. It would not possibly be something that is desirable, and that's the way we have acted. So I think we keep it at this, that the courts being the last bastion which is there available for the public in a situation of extreme criticality and emergency is one factor. But to go into entire issues, a policy can have several pitfalls. One, it can actually lead into areas which are, in a way, the domain of the executive. 2, it can lead to conflict because you will have different conflicting interests and you will have different conflicts of if orders are passed by various courts. In that sense, it is very good that the Supreme Court itself has taken on the 6 high courts who are taking care of the matter, so to say, passing various orders. So the Supreme Court not only took it in that other courts are not doing, but the fact that you have 6 courts doing various, passing various orders,
yes.
will actually be conflicting. So, I mean, this entire scenario is an extremely complicated one. There is no shoe which fits the size all. I mean, basically, yesterday what happened was needed at that point of time.
Yes.
It was stepping in, but there was some gap which needed to be filled in there and then. And to that extent, courts have a comparatively easier method of enforcing orders during a time duration which is required to be swift and speedy. But that cannot be for all times to come, for all situations. These are emergency situations.
These are
and Lord. But again, the future will tell it all. Everything cannot be planned in a country as large as India. We do have obstacles, and definitely COVID has not allowed anybody to plan in any manner that you think.
Point taken. We're almost out of time, but I'd like to thank Senior Advocate Pinky Anand, Meghna Mishra, Senior Advocate Geeta Luthra, Sameer Jain, Gagan Kumar, Senior Advocate Gopal Jain, Advocate Sudhanshu Pandey, Advocate Ami Singh Patrich for joining, assembling with us on this show at a very short notice. Supreme Court has taken cognizance of the matter. We will again do a show on the observations and the directions that the Supreme Court gives. We all look forward to what the Supreme Court is going to decide, because I think we are not yet out of this problem yet, at least not for a month as it looks. But I would like to thank all people who assembled for this show today. Thank you, viewers, for tuning in. Thank you.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.